Welcome everyone to the Machine Learning and AI Meetup for June of 2025. Tonight's event is a collaboration between the Meetup and Fabric Group, who have provided everything fancy about tonight, including the food, the live streaming. So I want to thank Dave for the AV and Oscary for doing the majority of the organizing for tonight. And look forward to welcoming our speakers from Fabric, Aman, Arvind, and Singh. So we've got a great event tonight following our usual format. We are right now at the announcements and AI news portion of the evening. Fabric's going to make some announcements of their own, and then we'll have the talk. And then remember this, because it won't come up again. At the end of the event, we go to tap 831, which is the closest pub, for dinner, if you would like to keep talking, keep networking. So, another two things I should say. Please don't smoke or vape in this room or anywhere in the building. No one has ever done this, but if you do, we will get fined a lot of money. The fire exit is the balcony. I think that is everything I have to say. So the announcements that we make every month are, would you like to give one of these talks? The Meetup relies on speakers giving talks. If you'd like to speak, you can go to mlai.melbourne/speak or talk to me or Jamie after the Meetup. And I'm not going to ask who's hiring because Fabric is hiring. They want to be the only recruiter at the event, so mob them afterwards. Announcements. PyCon, that is the world's premier Python conference in Australia, has a call for proposals out, and new this year they have a specialist track on data and AI. It's a lovely conference. I spoke at it last year. Tickets are like $900, but if you give a talk, then you get a free ticket. And while the call for proposals closes in 5 days, it's a really easy proposal. You just write a talk description. Highly recommend applying. So yeah, anyone want that QR code? You got 10 seconds. The phones go down. And you can just Google PyCon. MLAI Oz, the sort of more business-focused arm of MLAI, has an event on tomorrow named Vibe Coding for Business, which is a great overview on the state of automated code. Once again, that QR code up for a few seconds, but you can also just Google the event, Vibe Coding for Business. Without further ado, on to the audience participation portion of the evening. This is where I, who don't read the news, ask you to tell me what happened in the last month. Pardon that. Can anyone tell me an AI thing that happened in the last month since we last met? Wait till you're called. I can't see you. Adam?
So Claude 4 came out.
Oh, I need to be typing this. Claude 4.
Claude 4 with apparently it's the best coding model that's ever existed, as all of these things are the best. There's 4 new advanced features that I couldn't read in time to tell you, but essentially it's a much smarter system.
Cool.
Really good.
Cool. All right. Everyone use Claude 4. Yeah, Javier?
There's been a great paper, I think it's out of Meta, quantifying memorization across neural language models that, among other things, give a very good mental image of why rocking exists and double descent as a phenomenon. And it seems like it hasn't had like a flurry of papers saying, no, you're full of crap, so that is good news.
Is this description enough for people to find the paper?
I'll find one of the authors.
Okay.
Before I get posted the most recent one.
I see a hand. I see 2 hands perfectly aligned. So we've got person in front.
So NVIDIA presented a paper on SLM.
Emilio?
NVIDIA.
Oh, NVIDIA.
They presented a paper on SLM.
everything old is new again.
Okay.
All right, and behind you?
Apple opened the foundation models, like the apps can connect to their LLMs on the device.
Sorry, can you say that louder?
Apple opened up their foundation model,
Oh, cool.
so any device, any apps can connect to their.
I'm very sorry. Main author is Morris, and the paper is actually titled "How Much Do Language Models Memorize?"
Same two people in a line.
Cursor 1.0
Cursor?
1.0.
1.0. Have I spelled that right? Great. Yep.
Amazon announced $20 billion invested in Australian data centres in the next couple of years for AI.
Billion with a B? Amazing. It's going to take a lot of power. Yeah?
Apple's paper, The Illusion of Thinking, reveals that reasoning models collapse for solving problems.
What papers, what models collapse?
Reasoning models.
Reasoning models collapse. Cool. What else?
One of the responses is authored by Claude Code, and it's called The Illusion of Thinking. This is what's made me think that how much do language models memorize paper is good, is that nobody is like attacking it, or maybe it's a sign that everybody thought it was already the case. Anyway.
Oh, yeah.
Things, Gemini 2.5, Gemini Flash and Pro, they got released, VO3 got released for video production.
Gemini 2.5 for video production.
No, Gemini 2.5 Flash, and these are your foundational models, and VO3 is their video.
I'm sure I've gotten that wrong, but I can't hear you.
Gemini 2.5 Flash and Gemini 2.5 Pro are foundational models.
Oops, I can't select.
Is the video model for
I'm sorry, you're very far away. Any others? The text is getting small. Oh, yeah.
OpenAI's O3 price was reduced by 8%.
Sorry, opening.
Dropped their price on O3 by 8%.
Cool. Shaper, that's good. I reckon that's probably enough news.
There was something that didn't happen.
What didn't happen?
OpenAI was going to release the open weight model, and they delayed it again. It's delayed.
They just didn't release it on time.
All right, next month, people with news sit closer to the front, my aging ears. All right, without further ado, I'm going to hand over to Aman from Fabric to give the talk, and that's everything. I just got to.
Thanks, Lizzie. Thanks everyone for joining us. Just quickly start this lecture. All right. So I'll quickly go over the agenda. We'll start with a short description about Fabric. We'll give you an overview of what we are talking about, the trends, challenges, what is MLOps, how does it extend to FMOps and GenAIOps, FMOps, Foundation Model Ops, and GenAIOps. Then we'll have Arvind and Simran showing live demonstration of MLOps pipelines. And then lastly, we'll have Eva, our talent acquisition head. She will be sharing some hiring updates. And then we'll have some question answers. About us. So Fabric has been in the technology consulting business. Has been in the technology consulting business for about 20 years. We have our presence in Australia, India, China, and Southeast Asia, headquartered in Melbourne. We have a headcount of 125 plus. Our focus is on thought leadership, agile thinking, and system designs. And these are our clients that we work with. And it's an ever-expanding list here. Now, coming to the talk. So, I recently attended AWS Summit, and there was a quote over there how the enterprise AI adoption is going at the moment. And I really like this quote, gradual then sudden, which means that I think it was, adoption was happening gradually for the last few years, and then it has just exploded in the last couple of years. And then I looked up for the trends, and this is what the trends are saying. If you can look at it, since 2024, you can see around 85% growth in the adoption, and then you're expecting another, it go to 200% by the end of the year, and the trend is going to continue for the next year as well. Now, this means that everyone is focusing on solving their problems with AI, but are they really thinking about the process? That's where MLOps come into picture. We as an organization, when we partner with the customers, we help them focus on the process, not just the outcomes. Let's pick up a scenario of a squad. You have machine learning engineers in there. The task is to train a model or build a model, something like that, for a particular use case. Both of my machine learning engineers, they will start, one of them is working on feature engineering, and the other is working on model creation. They start on their own workstations. They will start, they'll start preparing some Jupyter notebooks, and they would want to collaborate. As a team lead, I may want to look at the stuff they are doing, work with them, and that's where the concept of governance, collaboration comes into picture. And then the tools we have for that, we have got GitHub as a repository for the Jupyter notebooks. Any data changes they are making, the data sets, they are being controlled in DVC, data version control. And as they train models, experiment, we would like to track it in something like MLflow. And this is how you would want the governance to be in place. And then finally, as an outcome of this process, you will have a model as a pickle file or a joblib file. You will containerize it and have an inference endpoint through an HTTP to be consumed by the clients. This is a very common process in a team working on an AI problem. Now, if you want to do it iteratively, like working as a team lead for my squad, I often had a challenge. My teammates, they were working on 27 different Jupyter notebooks to keep a track of the changes they were making. These three tools were really helpful for me throughout the journey. And it's not just you do it for one time. You have to do it time and time and again, every sprint, every day, to keep track of what is the impact in production environments and everything. Now, what are the challenges? So the first challenge is the data set. On a general, like my experience is, 60% of the time in a machine learning project is spent on cleaning up the data. And the remaining on 20% on training the models, but the focus is on training the data, getting the right data for the model. And that's where the concept of resource optimization comes into picture as well. Now with the advent of generative AI and foundational models, the focus is on prompt engineering, prompt management. How do you filter out toxicity, PII reduction, stuff like that. Implementing safeguards to make sure that you're not exposing any customer information. And then finally, once the models are available in production or in higher environments, you want to monitor and evaluate the performance throughout. You want to make sure that in many markets, I think regulators want, they may question you that why your model is predicting a particular outcome. And so you need to have proper governance framework in place to answer those questions. And again, this thing needs to happen iteratively again and again. So you need to have repeatable and reliable workloads to make sure you are meeting these requirements. So it's not just about building the models, it's about running them in production and doing it repeatably and reliably. Now, MLOps is all about governance, and it helps us to automate end-to-end machine learning lifecycle. It is an extension of DevOps. DevOps focuses on mostly code and data. You want to version your code, your data when you're dealing with it in a DevOps pipeline. With MLOps, model come into picture, and you want to version your model. You want to track the performance, the metrics properly. MLOps is an extension to FMOps and GenAIOps. MLOps, these are the steps that you want to take care of: experiment tracking, integration with your apps, monitoring and feedback loops, and building and deployment pipelines to continuously deploy the models in production and higher environments. FMOps is again an extension. It has all the things which you would do in MLOps, but it brings into picture prompt management, fine-tuning of the models, and agents. I'll give you an example. Like if we were recently working on an intelligent document processing use case where we wanted to try out some models to summarize documents for us, and we ended up like fine-tuning few and then comparing the results of them. And we want to have all these results available to us to take the right call, which model to go with. So all this, if it can be brought into a single platform to do all these things, track it from start to end over months of discoveries, that's where FMOps can help us. And GenAI is another extension. It probably covers most of the stuff we have in FMOps. Now, so that's why we define MLOps as a governance process to build models, tracking changes to code data in the models, deploying models without interruption in production, and then monitoring the performance of the models throughout. We have an example pipeline that we have built for this talk. I think we're using SageMaker for this one, AWS SageMaker, but I think if you're using GCP or Azure or any other cloud providers, they may have their own services to do the same. What we have done is we have set up a SageMaker pipeline. We have used a SageMaker Studio to come up with that pipeline. All the code sits over there. The data is sitting in the S3 bucket. The pre-processing is the first step where we clean up the data, feature engineering, all that is happening over here. And the next thing is once the data is cleaned up, it then goes into training phase for the model. We have a model evaluation phase to give us the metrics for the outcome of the training exercise. If the metrics are solving the business problem, it may not be like every use case will have its own threshold. Like for example, if I'm building an app for social media, a model for social media predictions, a 60% accuracy may be enough. But if I'm building for a healthcare or a finance, I would like to have it around 90%. So this is the point where I take a call whether to go ahead and publish this model into my registry. So the registry is like an MLflow registry or SageMaker registry where I can have all my models, for all the training jobs that I've run. I can track how the model has improved or degraded throughout the changes I've made in my training jobs, and I can track all those models like this. Then I have now next part is the deployment part, where I have a Lambda setup and an inference endpoint, which can auto scale. And this will give access to the model. You can invoke this endpoint to get the output of the model and use it in production. I'll have Arvind to demonstrate it on SageMaker. We have built some pipelines now. I'll call him up. Over to you, Arvind.
Thank you, Aman. Hello, everyone. Yep. So now we are going to see MLOps in action using SageMaker Studio. So I'll start with just demonstrating the data. So for this demonstration, we are using the Kaggle credit card fraud detection dataset. And in order to figure out the fraud transaction, we need mostly the 5 things: transaction ID, date and time, customer ID, terminal ID, and transaction amount. Using this data set, they have masked most of the PII data, and we have now the data set which looks something like this. We have a time, and we have from V1 to V28 variables, and then we have amount, and then we have class. Class 0 means it's non-fraud transaction, and 1 means it's a fraud transaction. Now, using the SageMaker pipeline, we are going to train a model. Let's go to the SageMaker. So this is our pipeline. As part of pipeline, we have the first step, which is a pre-processed data, which mostly splits the data set into 2 parts. One is the training data set, and the other one is test data set. Using the training data set, we'll train our model, and once the model is trained, we'll use the test data set to evaluate the model. And if the accuracy of the model is enough, then probably we'll register that model to SageMaker registry, and then after that we'll create a SageMaker endpoint to test our model and probably deploy it in our dev environment or staging environment. We can also use SageMaker registry to promote our model into multiple environments. Like if you're going to deploy it in dev environment and then you want to move that model to staging environment, you can also do that using the SageMaker registry. Now let's trigger one of and see if it actually works. Check 13. And meanwhile it's running, we'll just understand what's happening as part of these steps. So we have multiple options. We have Jupyter Lab, we have our Studio, Canvas, and Code Editor. I'm using Code Editor for now. And these are the scripts we have written. This is kind of AWS provided VS Code. And this is our script. We are using MLflow, which is provided by SageMaker. So what we can do with MLflow is we can publish our parameters, the model training parameters. We can publish our metrics, and we can also publish our model as an artifact. The same thing you can do with the like promoting your models using MLflow, but currently we are using SageMaker registry for this. So we have the tracking server ARN, which we got from SageMaker Studio, and we are reading credit card CSV file here, and then we are starting a run on MLflow, and then we are dividing our data set into 2 parts, train and test, and then we are publishing some metrics to MLflow. So let's go to the MLflow. We have these runs. So let's pick up the data prep. You could see the data prep here, and let's go inside data set. These are the metrics. Oh, sorry, wrong run. That. Yeah. So it says train fraud percentage, means 17% of the transaction in the input data set were fraud, and the test fraud we have 17%, and total train fraud count is 394, and test fraud count we have 98, which means as part of training data set we have 394 fraud transaction, and as part of test data set we have 98 transaction which were fraud. Now let's understand the other data set. So we are publishing this matrix from SageMaker pipelines. So in input data set we have 284,000 total samples, and we have 17% fraud transaction, and total fraud count was 492. And this is the details of training dataset and test dataset. Once we have training CSV and test CSV, we'll trigger our model training. So let's go to the train.py. Here we are using XGBoost, and then using XGBoost and train CSV file, we'll trigger our model training. And once model is ready, then we'll publish that model to SageMaker registry. And let's go to the ML flow matrix on ML flow, and we could see the artifact. Sorry, this is the wrong one. So this is the training matrix, and if we go to the model matrix, got it. Okay, cool. So these are the weights. So these are the features which we have given as part of our training data set, and this file defines the weight. What feature is most important? Yep. Okay, sure. Yeah, cool. So if we can see, V14 has the more weight, S133. We can also see the pictures. So these are the weights for all the features which we have in the data set. And as part of the pipeline, we have the next one, which is model evaluation, where we use the test CSV and then we test our model. And as part of this step, we are publishing we are using the evaluate.py, same thing, and then we are loading the model and we are giving the test data set, and then we are publishing the classification report. So let's understand the classification report. Okay. Artifacts. So this is our classification report: precision, recall, FN score, and support. We have accuracy here, which is 99% of the trained model, and based on this accuracy or these metrics, we can decide if we need to promote our model or not. And SageMaker pipeline supports conditional step, where based on the condition we can decide what to do. So if our accuracy is more than 90%, probably we'll go and publish that model to SageMaker registry, and otherwise we'll fail the pipeline here. So that's the evaluation failed here. And let's go to the model registry. So you can publish model based on the status. Either you can say it is approved, or you can say pending for approval, and someone has to go to SageMaker registry manually and then approve that model, so it can be deployed on SageMaker inference endpoint. So let's understand the models. Because I've already validated the accuracy, so these are the models which I've published using SageMaker pipeline, and this is the model group. And once model is approved, we can deploy it. So let's go to the version 4. You will have a deploy button here. Once you click on the deploy button, it will create an endpoint. So we have already created an endpoint using SageMaker pipeline. And this URL is active, but we can test our model here itself. While publishing the model, I have given that it takes input data as CSV, so we'll test now we'll test our model. So let's check one of it. So this is a fraud transaction. And then we'll paste the CSV here. It says 99% accuracy that this model is, this transaction is fraud. And we have already seen the weightage. So if we change the value of V4 and V14, then it should change the accuracy as well. So let's go on V1, V2, V3, V4. If we make it -2, 94. And if we do -8, it should further reduce. It's still the same. So we could probably use the V14 one. I think this is the one as V14. 9%. So as soon as we reduce the V14 feature, suddenly the prediction reduced. And once we have we are satisfied with the accuracy, probably we can deploy this model to production. But after deploying the model in production, we have to also monitor it. So SageMaker has something called baseline metrics. So when you train your model using trained CSV data, and then you can use the training data to come up with the baseline metrics. So I'll just show you how we can create a baseline metrics. So this is our default model monitor, and this only you can do, you can't do it in local, you have to use the SageMaker Jupyter Lab, and this is our training data set, and this is our output, and it will generate you 2 files. One is the constraint.json and the other one is the stats.json. So this is mostly about what's, so the idea about is to figure out the difference between training data set and what's coming as part of your input. So if there is any deviation, it can send you an alarm via the email or the group channel. So if we go, let's see the file, those files too. So we have already generated those files. So these are the constraint.json for each variable, and these are the stats. And once we have these 2 files, you have to generate it only once once you train the model, and after that you can enable data capture config on your model SageMaker, and yeah, so you have data capture config and you say model.deploy with this data capture config. So every time the request comes to SageMaker inference endpoint, it will record input and output both, and then you can run your job every hour, or it depends on the cron job. You can compare your baseline metrics and your input and output data set, and if there are any deviations, it will send you an email using CloudWatch metrics. And once we have, so it can tell you also that these are the deviation, and we can use those deviation and we can retain our model. So the cycle again start with building your model, and then training it, and then evaluating it, and then again deploying it to the production. And now we'll go to, I'll hand over to Simran to demonstrate the MLOps pipeline. Yeah, thank you.
Hello everyone. Now I'm just going to demonstrate, talk a little bit about foundation models and foundation models ops. So what are basically foundation models? So foundation models are these pre-trained models which are trained on very massive data sets, and they are trained using a broad spectrum of generalized data and unlabeled data. And it can be used for various general tasks such as understanding language, generating text, generating images, or conversing with like a chatbot. So just going over here, sorry, I'm just gonna open the pipeline over here. So basically the use case we are trying to cater for here is that we can use these foundation models and train them with our business specific, domain specific data, and use that as specialized generative AI apps. So it's very easy to do with Amazon Bedrock. So it gives us access to a bunch of foundation models over here, as you can see. So it's listed here: Meta, DeepSeek, Hugging Face, and etc. I'm just going to go to the pipelines and show you one of these pipelines. So this pipeline is created for fine-tuning a foundation model. The foundation model we are using here is the Titan text model, and the use case over here is So we are using a large data set which has some 300,000 articles data from CNN and daily news. And we are training the model which will then be used for summarizing these articles. So this is the pipeline. Currently, the AWS regions in Australia do not have this capability enabled for training the model. So I'm just going to walk you through step by step what this pipeline is doing over here. So the first step over here is data load. So in this step, we are slightly massaging the data. And since the base model which we are using, Titan text, it needs a customized prompt to be added to each of the data set. So this is what is happening in the first step. In the second step, we split the data in training data, validation, and test data. And in the third step, we are uploading that to S3 bucket. So the training data will be used in the training step. And in the training step, so the Bedrock guide basically provides us a documentation of what sort of hyperparameters we need to add for each of these foundation models. So we add that over here. And in the next step, I don't know why it's not letting me scroll. Okay, sorry. Yeah, so in the next step, basically it creates an inference endpoint and it creates a provision throughput. So basically it provides you computational capacity for where your model can run. And basically the client can access the API over there. And the next step is testing the model, so where we test it against the baseline metrics. Yeah, what?
Okay, so as soon as the pipelines come to the training model, it will go to the Bedrock. Bedrock is a AWS service where we can train or fine-tune models. So let's go to the Bedrock. We have custom models because we are fine-tuning a model. And as soon as we trigger the job from pipeline, we can see the job here. And if we go to the job, this is our source model. As we explained, this is Titan Text G1 Lite, which is provided by Amazon. And this is our input location. And this is our validation data set. And once model is ready, and these are the hyperparameters, number of epochs, learning rate, and batch size. And once the model is ready, we can also see that model here. And in order to validate our training or our model, this is not a classification model where we can do is it true or false or 0 or 1. So they have something called Evidently AI. Evidently AI. So you can actually create a script processor in SageMaker pipeline, which will use the provided model from Google or ChatGPT, which you can use to validate your model or the toxicity level, the hallucination, and those script processor will you can see the jobs in SageMaker. So if I go to SageMaker, let me just open it somewhere. Yeah. Oh, this is very stupid. Speaker AI. All the jobs you could see in the processing jobs. So we triggered one of the Jobs, model evaluation as part of pipeline, and you can see that this jobs comes here. And all the script processor as part of SageMaker pipeline will also be shown here. And once the jobs is complete, and then you can also publish the metrics on MLflow. Now let's get back to our pipeline execution which we have triggered. Execution, this is the exec 13 which we have triggered, and now it's completed. It's the same data set which we are using, and we can also create a scheduler on this pipeline if you click on scheduler. So as soon as our data scientists upload the files to S3, this pipeline will trigger, it will train a model, it will publish all the metrics to MLflow, and based on the metrics we can decide if we need to promote that model to our dev environment or staging environment. So the entire pipeline is automated, and no manual work is required once this entire setup is ready. So you just prepare your data set and then train your model and then test it. There's no manual work after it. Yep, any questions? Yep.
How much manual work is usually involved at the data set stage when you prepare all the data?
Sorry, could you repeat it?
How much manual work do you usually do in like cleaning up the data, separating out the training data from the evaluation data? Like what's involved?
I think most of the efforts is around cleaning up the data, but once you have the setup ready, probably you can just create pre-process steps and write a script like we have written here as part of data prep. It's mostly around removing the null values and removing the outliers if there is a way to figure it out, and then we can automate all this. Yeah. So next time you don't have to run it in your local also. And it also takes care of the machine size. So once you configure the machine size, you don't need to worry about number of servers set. Which if you're not on cloud, you can also, then it would be a problem.
And it depends on the use case as well, what kind of data you're dealing with.
Yeah.
Yep.
When selecting the model, how do you choose like which model you want to select on which you want to train what size model and what model you want to train?
You don't have to select, you just need to run the model and you have to tell number of servers, and it will take care of auto scaling as well. So if I go to endpoint.
And just to that, I think generally the models, would know like which model is good for a specific use case. For example, we're talking about Cloud 4.0 doing really good with code generation and all. I think there are models which are useful for specific use case, but if you want to compare, you can use these pipelines to test different models and then compare the outcomes using the evaluation metrics. That's really helpful with this FMOps stuff.
So currently we haven't configured the auto scaling part, but if you can configure it here. So you don't have to worry about number of machines on how many requests you are coming to your server. It will take care of it. Yeah.
Back to that, guys.
Hmm.
So in terms of the features,
Hmm.
original data set,
Hmm.
how do you choose which features to include in the model?
So that is called PCA, Principal Component Analysis. Yeah. And in our case, we are using XGBoost, which is taking care of all this. Yeah. Yeah.
You have the ability to set up committees of models where you have a series of models and they're all operating.
Yeah. So that's called variance. Currently, all the traffic is going to model this. But if you want to do 50-50, 50-30 and all, you can also do. You can add one more model or one more variant, and you can divide the traffic. It's like in ChatGPT, if you go, they'll give you the two different options, and then you have to provide the feedback, which one is good. So that's one of, that's their way of testing their models. Yeah.
First of all, great presentation and great demo. I wanted to ask something regarding model monitoring.
Mm-hmm.
I guess you do the model monitoring or model drift detection based on the baseline metrics
Correct.
defined, right?
Yeah.
What happens if the model evaluation metrics do not match with that of the baseline metrics? Does the model still get promoted to production? or does that require manual intervention?
So that you can configure. So if I go to the pipeline, so this is our eval step, and go to the conditional step. I'm just reading that JSON file. I'm just doing metrics.accuracy, and write is 0.9, which is 90%. You can configure whatever you need as part of your pipeline. Yeah. Anyone else? Yeah.
Out of curiosity, in the test data,
Hmm.
what was the data dimension the model decided to put most weight on? What did that represent?
That is, if you go to data prep, there is a variable called test size 0.2, which is 20%. So if you're 100%, then 80% of your training data set and 20% is your test data set.
Yeah, but I meant the actual CSV value, right? V40.
Yeah, yeah.
The encodings, I think.
What did that represent in the credit card data?
No idea. So, because they have masked it, there's no way of knowing that what's V1 to V28.
Yep.
So the credit card data is from a credit
Kaggle.
card from Kaggle.
Yeah.
So what's an example of something that you've applied this to for real operations?
We tried to do the credit card fraud detection.
Okay.
So, yeah. So there's a company called Marketa in US. And they have all the transaction data. So, because we don't have the actual data set because of the PI information, and they also provide the, if you go to core API, dispute, there will be somewhere transactions. So whenever you swipe your card, the first request goes to MasterCard, and then MasterCard will forward that request to credit card processor, and they will have a 5 to 10 second to either approve or decline the transaction. And if you work for Marketa, probably at that time you can trigger your model and you figure out if it's a fraud or not. And same thing here as a Combank API. If you're swiping your card first time, it will ask for the OTP, and next time onwards it won't ask. Yeah. Yeah.
What would you say is the most important thing to kind of streamline ops going from when you're trying to first productionize a model? Like, let's say you've just done a Kaggle notebook or something, and you want to actually get it. Do you need to set up all this SageMaker stuff to go into production, or is there like a simpler starting point?
I think for the starter, probably we can do the manual stuff, and once we are in production, probably we should do all the pipeline setup, because what we have seen the stats, within 6 months your model will drift, because your relationship between the features are changing in production, and then if you want to run the process again, it will take a lot of time.
Yeah, but I think the approach should be shift left for this one, because I'll just come there.
Yeah.
I think the approach for setting up the MLOps pipeline should be shift left. I think you should be setting up sooner than later, because the moment models are in production, you need to keep a track of the performance and all. So yeah, I think sooner than later.
So if someone wants to do like a POC to,
You can do it.
You can do a prototype. Most of the audience here isn't playing around in SageMaker, for example.
Yeah, you can do it. I think even we often do it as well. I think if we want to play out with some models, we'll connect to the AWS console from our local workstations through AWS CLI, and then play around with that. You can do it. If you don't want to invest time for a POC and setting up these pipelines, you can do it. But if you are working on a production application, then it is recommended that you set it up sooner than later.
So for your local experiments, would you use something like Jupyter Notebooks?
Yeah, you can do that. So you don't even need Jupyter notebooks. You can generate some Python scripts anywhere and just try out the models.
What happens if you're unable to find a model that reaches your wire threshold?
Then you have to change your data set, the input data set. Yeah.
I think, see, SageMaker has recently launched something called SageMaker Hyperpod, where you can train your own LLM. So if you, in fact, the stats are around like people, if you break it down, custom models, fine tuning and RAG, I think, obviously fine tuning and RAG are the most common ones, covering 90% of the use cases, but still in 5 to 10% of the use cases, people are actually building models.
It's a big bill.
Yeah, it's a big bill. And that's where I think SageMaker Hyperpod gives you the capability to do that. Can you show that as well?
That is a lot of bill to pay.
Yeah, you can configure your
It's not in SageMaker.
Hyperpod clusters. You can set up your clusters over here and start training your own model.
Question. Your colleague mentioned some of these steps are not available in Australia. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. And would that be a problem for some like projects requirements they have?
Yeah. See, I think it's kind of a niche space as of now. I would expect a lot of these models to be available in coming days, but at the moment, I think you're trying out one of the custom model feature is not available for fine tuning the model. But if you want to build RAG pipelines and all, then it should be fine. But if you want,
is it not available? Is it because of data?
I think that's an AWS question to ask. But yeah.
But if you want to try it out,
Yeah, that's why they're building those data centers, maybe $20 billion, isn't it?
but if you want to try it out, you can just go to US East or US West. You should be able to access it.
Change the region.
Yeah, but I thought maybe a project has a requirement of data residency or something like that.
I mean, it's also got a magic wand that can create.
You can, I think, see what we have seen, if we need a particular service to be available in the region, we can request, like some organization, they can go reach out to AWS, and based on their license, they can request them to make it available. And they do that. That's the experience we have.
Yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
So earlier you mentioned that it would be nice to set up this pipeline as early as possible, but there's also a conflict with people like doing models. For example, they might want a little bit more flexibility, like, oh, I see this model's not working. I might need to put in a new feature, so I need to edit my script, edit my query to put in a new feature. But if like they are doing the entirely manual way, it's probably very simple to make the edit. But if you already set up the pipeline, then you need to, the data processing is a script separate from the training script, and you need to add a training, make the changes in the data processing script. But then it needs to be saved into the table. So now you need to update the schema of the table just so that the data can be passed into the model. So how would you say is the balancing point where you can maintain both the flexibility and like the robustness of setting up the pipeline?
See, I think that's where the challenge is. And see, with AI, I think there are a lot of new roles coming into picture. Something like AI governance officer. He would want you, whatever approaches you are taking, he would want that to be streamlined and governable. So, I know it's for as an engineer, it is very tedious for me to set up these pipelines, and it will be a lot easier if I can just code on my workstation, if I don't even have to check in code. But again, I think in an enterprise setting, you have to take care of these things. And it's a one-time investment. Once it is set up, then it works like a well-oiled machine.
Yeah. You had a question? Yeah.
Oh yeah, just another question about the training data. So there was an example that had like 300,000 CNN articles, was it? Like, what's the process that you would go through to get the evaluation? Like, if you're creating a model that summarizes these articles, where are you getting the summaries from to evaluate against? Like, how does that process work?
So currently, what people are doing they are just getting the summary output from the model, and then they are checking the toxicity level, and the other one is hallucination. And these are the parameters you can test using. So there is one model provided by Google. It's called BERT hallucination or something, and BERT toxicity. I don't exactly remember the name. And ChatGPT 4o can also do the same thing. So they are using another model to check if your model is good enough or not. Yeah. Just wanted to call out, this is just for the reference. Yeah, the marketer thing.
Yeah, just for reference.
Yeah.
Probably we'll not need ML engineers anymore, isn't it?
Yeah.
We'll have the agents doing it for us. All right, any more questions? I'll ask Eva for the hiring updates.
Just 1 more minute, sorry.
He wants to talk about something else as well. Yeah.
So now let's say if you want to expose your inference endpoint as an API, probably you can just put a service, either Lambda or ECS or EKS on top of it, and then you export that using API gateway, and then you are done. That's the perks you have when you're deploying all these things on cloud provider. So you don't have to worry about anything else. And probably you can just provide API as a service, which other credit card processor can use it.
Cool. Any questions? Yeah. And we can pass it on to Eva then. All right, Eva. Thanks, everyone.
Yeah, thank you.
Hi, everyone. It's a pleasure to meet you here today. And we hope you had a kind of a good night today and find the session very helpful and insightful. So I'm Eva, and I'm taking care of the talent acquisition at Fabric. So I'd like to take this chance to share with you our current openings. And if you are currently exploring some new opportunities, or you are just curious about what we are working on at Fabric, you can just scan this QR code to check out our current openings. So now we are just actually hiring senior developers, full stack with Java, and also some machine learning experience in these following regions, because we are currently scaling up our team for onshore team, which is in Melbourne, and also the offshore team in India, China, and the Philippines. So just feel free to reach out to me directly or connect with me on LinkedIn to just share with you more details about the current openings. And I'm more than happy to have a chat with everyone with you today. And of course, just feel free to share this with your colleagues or friends who might be a really good fit for us. And okay, so thanks for joining this session today, and hand over to Aman. Okay.
I think I'll pass it on to Lily.
Okay. All right.
Thanks, Lil. Yeah, sorry, I was cold. I put my jacket on. That is it for our June meetup. We'll just stick around, socialize a bit, make sure that all of the catering has been eaten to ease the cleanup effort. And then if you want to keep chatting, you can join us at TAP 831 for dinner. Their kitchen closes at 9, so we want to be out of the room by 8 so everyone gets to eat. All right, thank you all.